You ever been rolling through Nebraska at 2:17 in the morning? Nothing but cornfields, stars so bright they don't even look real. And you just start thinking, what if we're not alone? What if the government knows more than they're saying? What if ancient civilizations were wiped out by something from the sky? What if there's a ranch in Utah where compasses spin, cattle drop, and things walk that don't belong here? Tonight, we are definitely not talking about politics. We're not storming anything. We're not decoding tweets. We're talking UAPs. We're talking Skinwalker Ranch. And we're talking ancient cataclysms and conspiracies. Because let's be honest, long-haul drivers have spent more time staring at the night sky than NASA interns. Jake Debo's here. I've got questions. And if we disappear mid-episode, just assume that some of our speculation was right. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Let's get weird.
Welcome to the gold standard of podcasts for the gold standard of drivers. This is the Liquid Trucking Podcast with your host, Marcus Bridges.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Liquid Trucking Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today. I, of course, am your host, Marcus, and I am joined by my co-host, Amanda. Good to see you today, Amanda. How's things going out in Ohio today?
Fantastic, other than the fact that I've got the X-Files theme song stuck in my head on repeat right now. That's prepping for this combo, man. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do. So bad.
That's a good day to have it stuck in your head, though, because if there is a theme for today's topic, it's definitely the X-Files theme. Today, we are jumping into conspiracy theories, and a lot of your heads go to politics when we go conspiracy theories. We're staying way away from that garbage today. We're going to have some fun. We're going to talk aliens. We're going to talk geography, ancient geography, and we're going to talk anomalies from soup to nuts, really, Amanda. I mean, anomalies is one good way to kind of group a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about today into one category. And I guess that category is kind of just the unexplained.
Anytime you have a conversation where you can name drop the Marianas Trench, like, I'm down. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's true. We also dropped Ring of Fire. There are some geological terms in this conversation that we're about to have coming up here that I think you guys might have a little bit higher opinion of the 6 inches between all of our ears after this, because we actually sat down and did research for this episode. We've got facts. We've got things that are unproven, that are up for skepticism or full-on belief. It depends on who you are. Mm-hmm. And overall, it's just, I love talking about this stuff. This, to me, is, sometimes during football season, I'll have a few guys that live out of town that are my longtime college friends, and they'll come back and we'll watch an Oregon Ducks game, and then we'll come back and we'll come up here into my studio and we'll start cracking beers, and 3 o'clock in the morning happens like that. I mean, it's just there, and this is the type of stuff that we'll get into talking about. It's old athletes that aren't around anymore that we wish we could still watch, and punk rock. Those are the 3 things we talk about. And I like to think that if I was a driver, this is the type of stuff that if I was going to use my CB, or if I was in a party chat with some guys, a party line, or if I use Discord to talk to random people, this is some of the stuff that would really hook me, and I would just want to talk about it. And I think maybe, Amanda, the reason that it does hook me so much is because we live in such a world of black and white, right and wrong, and this stuff can't be painted with those brushes because we just don't know enough. And for a guy that just enjoys the conversation keep going, like I just want it to keep going, this is perfect for me because there is no answer and you can't convince me that you've got one, you know?
Yeah, it's fun, though. It opens up your imagination just like you're a kid all over again. But I got to say, I'm impressed with the 3 of us. Step aside Neil deGrasse Tyson, okay? Because we've got it covered when we're talking conspiracy theories.
Absolutely, we do. And Jake Debo is going to join us here in just a minute to talk about those. As always, though, first, I got to hammer down with some homework. Podcast.liquidtrucking.com is the website. And if you haven't been there in a while, you got to go check it out. It's fresh. It's updated all the time. Our guy Tyler working throughout the night to make that website excuse me, what it is. I just had a little burp that was kind of an anomaly there. Didn't see it coming, can't explain
My
it.
conspiracy theory is you were chugging a Coca-Cola before you went on.
It's zero sugar Baja Blast, actually.
Oh my God, I was half right.
Yeah, for those of you, well, nobody can see this because we don't use the video, but yeah, I just showed off my Baja Blast can because I'm a Taco Bell kid from the word go. You're not gonna have to pry Baja Blast from my cold dead fingers, and yeah, it's gonna cause an oddly timed burp every now and then. My apologies for that. But over at the website, as I was saying, podcast.liquidtrucking.com, you can also find a link through that email that comes directly to us, podcast@liquidtrucking.com. And I really wanted to draw your attention to that because what we found out in the interview with Jake that you're about to hear is that we have way too much to talk about for one episode on this topic. And we want you drivers to bring us some to break down next time. So podcast@liquidtrucking.com. After you've listened to this, you'll have a really good idea of the type of stuff that we want to talk about next time, so send in your ideas. Amanda, I don't want to wait any longer. We had such an awesome time with Jake. Let's bring him in. You know, Amanda, it's really hard to stay in front of a microphone when you're jumping from foot to foot with excitement like I am right now. I'm so excited about our next guest and our next segment. We've actually been considering doing this episode going back like 2 months now, and we finally have a spot for it and a guy joining us here. We've got Jake Debo back, and guess what? We're not talking about hockey this time. Jake, welcome back to the program, man. Glad to have you.
As always, Marcus, pleasure to be here today.
Now, you sort of put this kernel of this idea in my head, Jake, kind of like conspiracy theories. What do we know? What do we not know? And you kind of opened my mind to this as like a podcast topic. Typically, I don't like to jump into things that I can't at least educate myself on and be enough of a chameleon behind the microphone that it at least sounds like I have done some research, I've read through it, and I've caught myself up. And Amanda, I wonder if that's something that's touched you in your career as well. The reason I always kind of keep conspiracy theories at arm's length is because I'm A, not enough of a skeptic to ask the right questions, and B, I don't know, I can believe some of this stuff. Like, I don't know that I believe it as much as I just kind of, that would be really cool if that was true. So, Amanda, how do you feel about talking, high-level conspiracy theories on the air?
So, my husband and I, we used to own a very large barber shop, okay, with like 10 barbers in there. And I'm sure you can imagine some of the conversations that went on. And it was like sports and conspiracy theories. It's the craziest thing. I don't know why. But that was definitely one of the topics that was heavy, and also among like my husband's friends. So they will like get him into these things that he like will be fixated on for a few weeks at a time before I just have to completely destroy him. And then also like earlier on in my career, I had my first major celebrity heartbreak because of a conspiracy theory. I had like a really huge crush on Kyrie Irving when he was on the Cavs championship year, like big deal. And you know where this is going, don't you?
Exactly, because I couldn't believe it. Man, I couldn't believe it when he brought it up. I was like, really? That's your hill. Okay.
So embarrassing. And everybody knew I was like in love with this dude. And I had worked events with him, and it got like really close to, like maybe being something. Like, that never happens. This is your celebrity crush. And then this man says, I believe the earth is flat. And I just like, and everybody's like, your boy. I'm like, that is not my boy.
That's
I'm not
my
claiming
boy.
him now. Like, he really truly believed the earth was flat. And so, when I say first heartbreak because of a conspiracy theory, that's the one right there. Like, man.
That's hilarious.
Like, you fly on planes all the time, Kyrie. Like,
Jake, that's something as a sports fan that I got to bring up to you and get your take on it, because sometimes our athletes, our beloved athletes, the guys that we spend so much time and money investing, we let their performance dictate our feeling for a week, and then they come out and say something like what Kyrie Irving did. Does that ever set you off as like, I don't know if I can root for that guy as hard anymore?
Honestly, it's I gotta come clean here. I haven't done the research on the flat Earth stuff, so how can
Stop
I
it.
sit here and say
Stop it, Jake, right now.
That's exactly
how can
why
I
we're
sit
here.
and say that he's not, and he's completely wrong? No,
Wait,
no,
is
but,
this the
like,
prank episode? I'm
Stop.
confused. What are you doing?
Hey, all I can think for Kyrie's sake is he's probably up in these planes flying around, and he's probably thinking to himself, "Oh, it looks pretty flat from
Looks
up
pretty
here."
flat. Yeah.
I don't know, but
A lot
no.
of these guys don't finish their education, all right? They get
Right.
athletic and they don't really, the school, that's a back burner thing, right?
Yeah, I think Kyrie, he was definitely very much of the one and done era in college for sure. But at the same time, hey, these guys got a lot, when they're not playing or practicing, they got a lot of free time on their hands, a lot of time to fill their head with a lot of different things. So
Yes.
us regular people, we're busy all day working, just the rat race of life. And so we don't have the time to dive into these things. So I'm not going to fault the guy for just getting distracted on a interesting topic. We'll just leave it at that.
Interesting for sure. And that is sort of the reason behind today is like long road trips are great for conspiracy chat, right? Sitting at the truck stop just talking on the CB to somebody that you don't know, that's great for conspiracy chat. And we want to sort of bring that flavor to you here today. So I've got a few of these that I've looked up, and I'm just going to start going through them here. I know, Jake, you've done some research. Amanda, you've done some research. Some of these might overlap, but feel free to interject and jump in. I'm going to start with the big one, the one that I think has been the most mainstream over the past, I'm going to say 5 years due to the timestamp I've got on this. But that is the UAP phenomenon, which I kind of hate calling them UAPs because they're not unidentified aerial phenomenon. In my generation, the millennial generation, they are UFOs, unidentified flying objects. And back in 2020, the United States Department of Defense officially released Navy videos captured by FA-18 pilots showing unidentified aerial phenomena. Now, these are titled the TicTac video, the Gimbal video, and the GoFast video. Now, if you guys haven't seen any of these videos, I highly recommend once you're pulled over or once you got a minute, just stop and look at them because they're definitely worth the watch. But this incident happened in 2004, and it took the government 16 years to decide that our little brains could handle it. And the TicTac incident involved the USS Nimitz Carrier Strike Group, along with Commander David Fravor, who was flying the jet at the time that the equipment picked this tic-tac-shaped image up. It was a white capsule-shaped object with no wings, no visible exhaust plume on infrared, and instant acceleration. Just, it would disappear and they would see it someplace else on the radar. Kind of crazy. It dropped from 60,000 feet elevation to sea level in seconds, and it jammed the plane's radar multiple times while they were up there. The other thing that's not listed in my research here that this object did was fly directly to Commander David Fravor's FA-18 cat point, which is where they were headed. The point that's plotted on their map, that is where the flight ends. When they lost it, they didn't find it again until they got where they were going, and there it was. Now, in 2023, the Pentagon's UAP office, called AARO, said they have no verified evidence of extraterrestrials, but also admitted many of these cases remain unexplained. This one for me is a big one, you guys, because I have seen the videos. I've listened to God knows how many podcasts. And of course, the big one here is always Joe Rogan. Yes, I've listened to Commander David Fravor on Joe Rogan. I've also listened to him on about 10 or 12 other different ones describe this, and the story has never changed. Have you guys seen these videos? I'll just start out by asking you that, Amanda. Have you watched any of these, the Gimbal, the TicTac, or the GoFast?
I haven't seen any of the videos, but I feel like I've seen enough things with my own eyeballs that I don't need to see the videos, and I don't need somebody to tell me what's true or what's not true if I have seen it. And honestly, people listening along, like if you drive, you might be familiar with this area, but actually it was my move back from Oregon, moving back to the state of Ohio, and long drive, and you go across quite a few states, but there's an area, the Nevada Test and Training Range, 2.9 million acres. It's north of Las Vegas, major military desert area operated by the Air Force. Okay. And I remember there's like a bunch of signs before you head into that area. Make sure you get gas now, et cetera, et cetera. You are not allowed to stop. You are not allowed to pull over, nothing. And we drove through this area. It was pretty late at night. My ex-husband and I taking turns driving, just trying to get, as much road covered as possible. And the lights that we saw in the sky, I would say that they were orbits, like orbital, like round little lights. But the maneuvering they were doing was so unnatural for any aircraft, anything. I mean, we're talking, this would have been 2007. So drones weren't even really a serious thing at that point either, at least not to the mainstream public. But what I saw, and I understand like military testing area, I don't care. Somebody was probably watching. Something else was probably watching what the military was testing. And that's what I think those orbs of light were, but totally tripped me out. Never seen anything like it in my life. And that's the only thing I can attribute it to.
Interesting. And I think that there are millions of stories like that. A lot of them go unreported because people don't want to get called crazy. Amanda and I do this for a living, so call us crazy away. Just have fun with that. We always have to come out and kind of talk about these things like maybe they might be true. And I hope that these episodes encourage more people to do that because, listen, at this point, it's 2026, sweetheart. Nobody thinks you're crazy. Have you seen what's going on in the world?
Right?
I think you might be one of the most down-the-middle people if you go, I think I just saw a UFO. Like, me too.
Right.
So, Jake, I want to ask you, have you seen any of these videos?
Yeah, I have. And I think just as compelling as the video evidence is, though, is the audio of oh gosh, I'm blanking on his name now, but him kind of describing what he was seeing, the actions that craft was taking. Obviously you can go down like, well, they could add this in post-production and blah, blah, blah. But, something like it always is like those kind of things where I just as much as the audio is or the visual as the audio. How are they? Can you hear the genuine kind of shock in their voice? Can you hear the confusion in there? So I have seen them, and it was kind of crazy if you guys can remember going back to when they released the files and just kind of going back to Marcus's point of not thinking that, you're crazy anymore. Like that came out and the government kind of more or less said, we don't know what this is. And that should just be like, okay, the government has just confirmed the existence of a flying object that they do not know what it is. Now, they're not saying it's extraterrestrial, but that seems like a pretty big deal when you consider the United States military, its level of intelligence, and it could all be smokescreen because, again, the conspiracy, you got to always think there's something hiding behind each door. But the fact that nobody really had a big reaction to it, and there was all the hearings, multiple people, there was that, I think it was Gersh or something like that who did another one, Bob Lazar, another guy who's come out over the last couple of years. But that right there, I think, just shows that like the alien and UFO thing is kind of pass over us with all the other craziness that we're dealing with. But I've seen the videos, I've heard the audio, super compelling, and just another kind of piece of evidence you can add to the constantly growing stack, it seems.
Absolutely. Now, there's a few reasons why people tend to believe this and a few reasons why people tend to be skeptical. One reason that I think that carries a lot of weight with me, but there's a caveat to it, is that military-grade sensors picked this stuff up, and those are the most powerful ones we have. I don't care what they're selling you for your Ring doorbell camera and motion sensors and all the rest of it. The military's had it for 20 years, and they've perfected it far beyond what is available to me and you, the consumer. Now, I will say this. Military-grade sensors picked it up, yes. How does that say that it's an alien, right? It doesn't necessarily say it's not of this world. I don't know. Like I said, there's a bit of a caveat with the military-grade sensors picking them up because people are also seeing them with their naked eye, and it could still be some sort of trick with the eyes, I guess. I don't know. I mean, I saw Tupac perform on stage as a hologram, and I'll be damned if it didn't look almost exactly like Tupac was up there getting down. So I think that there's ways that these things can be smoke and mirrors, like you say, Jake. Multiple pilots and radar operators corroborated. That's one that carries a lot of weight with me. Hard to have everybody lie about something and get the story right for 16 plus years. Even more now that we're talking about it. We're over 20 years since this incident. And the craft showed flight characteristics beyond known propulsion, which is another reason people say, well, it's got to be extraterrestrial. We don't have that technology. I always like to say, guys, we don't know what technology we have. The military knows what technology we have, and even then, it's so compartmentalized, most of those guys don't know what the guy next to them's job entails, and they do that on purpose, right? Reasons why skeptics push back: optical illusions and sensor anomalies happen, right? Unknown doesn't equal alien, which makes me want to slap you in the face when you use that argument, because it doesn't not mean alien either. And classified foreign tech could explain some sightings. I think that's a really good one. So let me ask you this, Amanda. If this is ours, why do you think our pilots are so confused and just dumbfounded by it?
So, if it is, for example, a cover-up, right, and our own government owns the tech, not everybody is going to know about a super secret tech, right? And if anything, to continue to kind of like cover for themselves, why not allow their own people to say, I don't know what it is. I've never heard of it. I have no clue. You look at things that got kind of blown out of proportion. My God, Area 51. Everybody and their mom knows about Area 51 now, but at some point that was a rumbling, right?
Right.
I feel like we've all been so desensitized almost to the existence of extraterrestrials that we all kind of, I think at this point, assume, well, it could be true. And, you know, when we're ready to know, we'll know. I think the evidence from shows like Ancient Aliens speak volumes. The Greek guy with the crazy hair, he's my favorite. I love that guy. I can't remember his name, but
he's the meme guy. I can't remember his name either, but he's just aliens guy. Yeah.
Yep. So he talks about different types of buildings, of sculptures, of architecture, of things that exist in different places on the planet. For example, similarities between things you can find in ancient Egypt, but then also South America. And we can do carbon dating. We know things are very, very old, right? So how can something that is identical exist in two completely opposite sides of the planet if we didn't have the tech to travel to be able to share that information thousands of years ago? You know, things like that really piqued my interest and make me go, they do kind of have a point there. And then, you know, I watched Stargate way too many times as a kid. So you throw that into there and your imagination takes off. But you can make it make sense with logic. If it exists, if they exist and that's a real thing, then that would make sense of how that tech traveled. Another thought is we are the aliens. We came here a long time ago and took over the world, and this is just what the version of us is now. So who knows? But there's evidence in different ways, and that's one of those theories that I'm kind of like heavy into believing for sure.
Jake, anything to add there after listening to Amanda talk her way through it? I saw
and
your
you can
interest
call me crazy, for sure.
I saw your interest peaked a little bit when she said, "Are we the aliens?"
No, I mean, I've had that thought too. Like I've had, you know, there's always the thought exists. Because my whole theory behind it is it kind of goes to my theory on the universe, and that the universe is constantly expanding, which means that there's infinite chances for infinite things to happen, infinite chances for the perfect combination to come along and life to develop. So that's kind of where my thinking is at. When it comes to the whole, are we alone? But to that same point, we could be the first. We could be the first of all of those. It could be happening everywhere, you know, from now. But we could be the first. We could be the first people to go out and try colonize other planets. You know, there's nothing says that we can't be the first. And so I've never heard or really delved into the theory that we came here from somewhere. That's super interesting. You know, we've seen various examples of that. Maybe not just like landing on a spaceship, but like an asteroid, microbe on an asteroid or something like that. Totally. I mean, could happen. Absolutely. Who knows? I mean, how the universe started is like, whoa. Anything can happen, right? So, but I think the interesting thing that I think doesn't get talked about enough, and maybe it's a little bit different when it comes to aliens, extraterrestrials, these future technologies, things like that, is you know, interdimensional. You know, what instead of coming from up, what if they're coming from down below? You know, what if they're, you know, coming from a Pacific Rim? You know, there's an interdimensional rift in the bottom of the Marianas Trench where these beings came from. Stranger Things, much better recent example. You know, interdimensional stuff could also be, you know, it doesn't have to be from another planet, it could be from another dimension, you know.
Journey to the center of the earth, you know.
Hey, Interstellar.
A whole other world inside of our world. I mean, who knows?
Right.
I
Right.
think about Interstellar when you talk about multidimensional travel and how the protagonist life form in that movie sort of created a way that humans could interact with the fifth dimension because we don't have the ability yet. And that really, like, God, you want to talk about exploding all of the synapses in your brain. We can't comprehend it. And I'm watching a movie that's saying, hey, comprehend this. And I'm trying. I swear to God. Matthew McConaughey, I'm trying. I love that movie so much. I watch
my
it on
God,
every
no.
3-hour plane ride. Every 3-hour
That
plane
movie
ride
is a
gets
source of
Interstellar.
contention in our household. My husband has watched that movie so many times. I am scarred. Like, it's ridiculous.
It's so good. I pick up something new every single time, and I will die on this vine. One of the most accurately and best scored movies of our generation. The music in Interstellar makes the movie. Pay attention to it next time you watch it. But Jake, something you touched on back there is kind of a perfect segue to my next one, which I know that you like. And that is the Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis, also called Ancient Impact Theory. But just to sum it up for you real quick, roughly 12,800 years ago, Earth experienced sudden cooling called the Younger Dryas period. Some researchers argue a fragmented comet impact caused massive wildfires, megafauna extinction like mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, and the collapse of early human civilizations, and that's the big one. Now, the theory was popularized in the book The Cycle of Cosmic Catastrophes and later echoed in documentaries like Ancient Apocalypse. If you haven't seen that from Graham, his name
Hancock.
Graham Hancock. Thank you very much. You've got to look it up. Look, there's a lot of geologists out there that hate Graham Hancock and think that he is killing science, and there's a whole other school of them that think that without people like him, we won't ever learn what really happened. We'll only learn what we think happened and what won a bunch of people prizes and what got them famous. And so it's in their best interest to defend their hypothesis, if you see what I'm saying. Jake, talk to me about your thoughts on this, because I hear it. I see what Graham brings up. There's another doctor that's gone on so many podcasts that he shows maps of like drainages, and they come right down through where I live. One of them's called the Bonneville drainage. I'm not that far from the Bonneville Dam. So this is a big one for me too, because I see a lot that adds up here and a lot that makes sense. And when I see scientists fighting tooth and nail to keep something under wraps, I think there's even more reason that we should talk about it. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so Graham is definitely a controversial figure in that, and it just maybe the general science community. I know you could go look him up on YouTube, and there's all kinds of people trying to debunk his stuff and calling him all kinds of crazy stuff. Which that's for me has always been kind of what you were saying. It's just the reaction. My fiance tells me I'm an Aquarius, and us Aquariuses like to question a lot of things. And so that's what always bugs me about the reaction that these other scientists have. And it's just like, man, why can't we just have like a civil discussion about it rather than them constantly seeming to get angry? I know one guy that's constantly going back and forth with him is Flint Dibble, I think is his name.
Yeah, what a name for a geologist. You did not miss with the name Flint Dibble, let me tell you.
Flint Dibble and his whole look. I mean, his look, it all has me kind of a little bit questioning.
Yeah.
But I know he's one that goes back and forth. And for me, I'm somebody, I just love to speculate and ask these questions. Like, I don't want to argue about them, which needs to be happening. But on the topic itself, extremely interesting. A lot of the reason for that, it goes back to some of what you were talking about, Amanda. And it goes back to, and the gentleman you're referring to, Marcus, is Randall Carlson, the geologist who really focused on the geographic formations out there in your part of the country in the Northwest called the channeled scablands. It's really compelling for a number of different reasons. And it kind of all goes back to this thought that I had as a kid. When you're in school and you're learning about Native Americans, right? And you learn about how they treated the buffalo on the prairie, very much like the total reverence for the buffalo, not overhunting them, realizing what the resource of it provided. But then at the same time, you're told at that time, way long ago, but you're told that it was the hunter-gathering cultures back then that killed off all the woolly mammoths. And something in there just never really made sense. I didn't really know what I was thinking at the time or why it didn't make sense, but I think hearing both of those things at the same time, something in my brain, my young brain was like, something's not right about that. And so that was the first piece of evidence that I heard was why are there's these mass deposits of woolly mammoths bones all together, clearly like a mass death event of some kind. Maybe I've seen like I think the most common example I've seen is like just like tar pits or something that they all waded into and just died. I never really bought that because the evidence says that these mammoths had things like broken legs and stuff like that. What would have the force to break the legs of a woolly mammoth? Something really big, and that's where this flood comes in. And Amanda, another compelling point about it is all across the world, from various cultures, you'll see stories of a giant flood. The most obvious example for us is the Moses flood, right? But there's stories of that all across the world. How do they all have a similar story from a similar point in time? And going back to the theory, I believe, as I think does Marcus, that it was caused by a meteor from I think it was the Torrid meteor stream that came and impacted the ice caps in the north that basically just unfroze I can't quantify the amount of water that caused this giant flood. And it primarily came down through the shale scablands in the Northwest, where you can see these things. You can see where these giant falls were created. A good example is, ripples on a beach when a beach, and I'm making hand motions that nobody can see, but when the tide goes out and you see the ripples on the sand, these little ripples, those ripples exist up in the Northwest. You could see aerial footage of them. Yep. So that in itself, it's like clearly a huge body of water came and receded from this spot. And the explanation has always been a glacial ice dam breaking. I just don't see... it's hard for me to visualize a dam that big releasing that amount of water causing the damage it did. But then as the end result, it killed off all of the megafauna. And, in this part of it's why in the part of the world that was spared during this big catastrophe was that sub-Saharan Africa, the savanna. That's why elephants, tigers, giraffes, all what they classify as megafauna still exists there. And that's why none of it, giant sloths, saber-toothed tigers, the woolly mammoth, all of these things died out in North America. So that, I could go on for days and days about it, the levels of geologic, but the other part about it too is it I think ties into Atlantis in a way. Now, if you were to go look at a map, and I don't know the timing of these things, this is where I kind of lose my research, but if you go look at a map of Africa and you look for the Rashat structure, it's a set of concentric circles in the desert. And if you look at it from a pulled back aerial view, what you can kind of see is it looks like it's toward the western edge of Africa. It looks like a slope going down from a high aerial footage. So it looks like water ran through there and then down through off the coast, which would have taken it right through this Rashat structure, which people theorize is where it was Atlantis. And it was the folks from Atlantis who went out and spread their advanced culture to these various parts of the world that helped lift up human civilization and help kind of get it kickstarted again. But they were the advanced civilization that had technology, that had all kinds of sophisticated technology, specifically relating to, reading the stars. I think was a big thing in their alignment with the sun and stars and math and calculations and all that kind of stuff. But that's where I think, if Atlantis existed, maybe it got destroyed in this event, and it was the dispersal of the people who were from that culture that went to these various places. Because that's where these theories of these guys with if you go look at all these ancient civilizations, they have a tale of some great message bringer, some great informant coming and bringing them this technology and this knowledge. And it exists, again, multiple spots of the world. And that's where I think it came from, this Rashat structure that was Atlantis, that was impacted by this asteroid impact theory, of which we can see evidence all across the country, from the ripples to the black mat layer that shows the wildfires that happen as a result of this. It's a fascinating, fascinating topic.
We see natural disasters that change geography every single year, even natural disasters aside, just time going on. There's a park in a town I used to live in called Mentor Beach Park. There is no beach there anymore. And people have shown me pictures from the 50s. That was like the spot people would go and bring their blankets. It doesn't exist anymore. In addition to that, think about elementary school. You first learn about Pangea. You learn about all the continents used to fit together. I mean, there's nothing out of the realm of possibility if the Earth can move and shift that much, right? Have you ever seen a comet with the naked eye?
Yes.
It is the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life. I was driving to work. I was doing a morning show, so I was driving to work, crack of dawn, darkest of the dark outside, and lime green goes shooting across the sky, and I'm tripping. I'm freaking out. Like not driving and Googling. I clearly pulled over and looked it up. But I mean, oh my gosh, to see something like that is incredible. And to think about the size, not going to lie, I was watching Independence Day before I came on and started chatting with you guys. And to think about things that can be that large. I mean, what was the movie with Bruce Willis, Armageddon?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Like, come on. Something the size of even a Buick could tear a hole in our planet if it was going fast enough.
Yeah, since you brought up the movie, I have to quote the line, "Just wanted to feel the power between my legs, brother." It's one of the greatest lines in cinema when Steve Buscemi's sitting on a literal nuclear warhead. Sorry, Jake, didn't mean to interrupt you. Had to get it in.
No, great line, great piece of cinema history right there. But no, I think that's like Amanda, to your point. A couple years back, it was it was a couple years back that this happened in Russia. It always seems to happen in Russia for some reason. But
it's
the one
big.
where actually probably very true. But they had the one where it was like it was a very, very, very small piece of asteroid or comet that came in and kind of had the airburst thing and busted a bunch of windows. Then you go look at the Tunguska event.
Yep, Tunguska.
Can't remember when that happened, but then again, similar airburst and how it just. I think it was literally like this. They said it was like the size of like a small car, and it had an airburst, and it flattened basically an entire forest.
Oh, and what's crazy too is the top-down view from that. What you see is that it's not all the trees laying in one direction. It's literally they're spread out like something blew up above them, and so they're all pointing out in a concentric circle.
It is.
I mean, one of the strangest things you can ever see. Just the picture of that one that you're talking about. And sorry to interrupt there, Jake.
No. But I was just saying, like, when you go look at something that size that can have that much of an impact, and you think about the amount of just sheer force to knock down a tree, and anything that's kind of bigger than that, and the kind of the impact it can have, it really is crazy. But I just don't see all the evidence out there, especially with the mass dying events of these megafauna animals. Like how. There's clearly a massive disaster. I just really like to think it's this asteroid. It makes most sense to me.
There's a lot more evidence, too, that we haven't even touched on here. There are nanodiamonds in sediment layers that can only have been created by an explosion or some type of impact event, right? What creates diamonds? Oh, a whole hell of a lot of pressure, and not the type that you get by spiking a football in the end zone. Platinum spikes in the Greenland ice cores have been detected. That's also something that should not be there. And there's a black mat sediment layer all the way across North America, and you can't really dispute this. There's a place down in Utah. I was watching a documentary once where there's basically the whole side of this hill has slid away, and what that did for geologists is just open up a massive amount of research that they can do because they can see the sediment layers in the side of the hill. And there is a giant black, probably 4-inch, 5-inch, 6-inch sediment layer that's down a long ways, about 12,800 years ago, and it's all the way across the North American continent. And you can't imagine that the whole continent didn't burn, right? So something had to have burned. Maybe there was a lot of wildfires that added to it, but some sort of impact that probably caused that layer. Jake?
Now, something else too to remember is this also came with I think it's pretty well documented, a short period of global cooling.
Yep.
Explain to me, and again, this is me asking the question, not being contentious to the scientists out there. if it was a ice dam that broke, for example, how does that result in a short period of global cooling and not like it wasn't a long-run trend. It was quick. It was right away. How does an ice dam do that?
Cause that, right?
Whether it was through a huge, like a large amount of wildfires, that you have to think about the sheer amount of wildfires that need to be going on to get that level of smoke in the atmosphere across the entire globe and cool it down. Again, seems unlikely. We've seen it with the dinosaurs, which I guess is still hypothesis, but that was, it wasn't the asteroid impact that killed them. It was the fallout.
Yeah,
it was
the fallout.
everything that got kicked into the atmosphere. The sun was blocked out. Plants died. Dinosaurs died. Then followed the meat eaters. So that to me is like even maybe the most compelling is like we had a snap period of global cooling. Something got kicked up into the atmosphere and it obviously
blocked out the sun. Yeah, blocked out the sun.
Where did it come from?
That makes the most sense to me too, Jake. And I'll go in here to why the believers like this is like we talk about the geological signals, the evidence of global cooling, the sediment layer. That's all real. You can't disprove that. They found it. They might not be able to explain it, but they can see it. There is sudden climate shift, I already said, well documented, and Jake touched on this earlier. There are oral traditions across almost every branch of humanity, regardless of your religion, that reference a great flood. Hard to think that many people that couldn't contact each other via smartphone all came up with the same story just on a whim, right? Don't believe in conspiracy, or don't believe in coincidence. That's what Christopher Maloney or Detective Elliot Stabler would tell you if you were watching Law and Order. Skeptics say the evidence is inconsistent. That's a garbage take. Sorry, I'm not I don't even know why I put that in my research. I think that's inconsistent. So is everything. Nature's inconsistent. Show me 190-degree angle in nature, and I will tell you that I'm wrong about that. But we are inconsistent. That's what makes us human. That's what makes the world what it is. So, again, I think that's a garbage take. There is no confirmed crater, Jake. I kind of know where your argument against this would go. But if I were to be a skeptic and say, well, where's the crater? What are you going to tell me?
I'd say it's buried under the ice in the North Pole or the South or up in north. That's where it's at. And I think there's been some recent discovery or evidence along that line that they might have discovered that. I think that might have been the latest big breaking news on it, is they maybe have discovered that crater.
Okay, and that's a good one. I might say the ice was so thick where it hit that it didn't leave a crater. It just completely collapsed the ecosystem. If we're talking about the size of, like, if you're not familiar with the geology of the Pacific Northwest, when all of the topography has just been stripped of trees and everything, and you're just looking at the shape of the ground, you can totally see that the ice caps drained right down through the Pacific Northwest. When it happened or how it happened, couldn't tell you, but I do know what it looks like when water melts and drains across the surface, and boy, you would be, the scarps that we have through here, right where I'm at in the Willamette Valley, we're the lowest point in Oregon. We run just east of the coastal mountain range and just west of the Cascade Mountain Range. So we're right between two mountain ranges at sea level, and we have all of these mounds that are concentric along the Willamette Valley, and they're just dotted, and they're all pointing the same direction, and they're all oriented the same way. Now, did an ancient civilization build these as some sort of massive network? Look, it's possible, but if you told me that maybe a giant wash of water or glacial slide or something like that ran over and there were little air bubbles in it that allowed the land to mound up in certain spaces, I could totally believe that too. So, again, garbage take with their no confirmed crater, I think, but this is just me. We're going to get into whether or not we really buy into these in a minute, but Amanda, before I go away from the Younger Dryas Impact Theory and hit on our last one we're going to talk about here today, I want to open it up for your thoughts on this, because this is one Jake and I are really into. How do you feel?
So when I lived in Wyoming, one of the things that people would always say is, oh my gosh, that mountain is a volcano and it's going to explode. And, you're in the worst place you could possibly be on the planet of all the places you could live. Why would you choose to live there? So I feel like having that kind of like drilled into my brain, it's hard not to think about the geography of places that are not places you've grown up, right? Even living in the Pacific Northwest, the number of mountain ranges, the number of peaks and places to go visit. I mean, traveling from one town to 2 towns over and having to go through a mountain pass. There's so much in the geography out that way. You know, when you get away from New England or away from the Midwest, what I'm familiar with, I mean, I feel like you can see so much of that in other places in the country. So I don't know. I'm with it. I'm leaning towards it. I think that you both have done a good job of convincing me further. So
We've been living in this rabbit hole for years now. I can tell Jake has, just
I
like
can
me.
tell.
And I will say real quick that they does look like they have found a crater underneath Greenland, one of the areas which Graham thought there might be a crater. So,
There you go. There you go. So, you know, I think about it's something we didn't even talk about, and we're sitting here discussing all of this geology. I literally live in the land of volcanoes. Like, I grew up on a mountain range where they told us at school, like, that one blew up, and that one blew up, and that one probably created half the state. And you know, I live 700 miles from that within the same state, and I'm 30 minutes to the west and 30 minutes to the east. There are mountains that look like volcanoes all over the place. These types of events can trigger volcanoes, which can also cause the blocking out of the sun and global cooling. And we're sitting here in the Pacific Ring of Fire where there's only like 300 or 400 of them, and we're just waiting for the big one to tick off and delete the entire western seaboard. So many things could have happened that triggered this. It could have been a concert of things coming together at the right time, and maybe just one little misplaced asteroid. Could be all just a farce, and we might all just be having this conversation just to hear ourselves talk. I don't know, but I'm so compelled by it. And the last one I have for you guys here, I actually have more, but we're going to have to do a part 2 on this because there's so many of these that are so much fun. But the reason I want to talk about this next one is because it's been so evident in the pop culture lately, and I want as many people to be able to relate to what we're talking about as possible. Have either of you guys heard of or watched the television show Secret of Skinwalker Ranch?
I know what you're referring to. I've watched bits and pieces of it. Fiance is big on this part of it. She grew up in the land. She grew up in Oklahoma, so a lot of Native American traditions and stories there. So this is one that she talks about a lot, actually.
Okay, Amanda?
I'm not familiar. I mean, what is it like the Appalachian Mountain type situation?
It's actually out in Utah, and similar as it is pretty rural out there. It's not as far removed from civilization, I don't think, as some of the places in the Appalachians are that never get visited. So the reason that this kind of came about is because on this ranch, they were having UFO sightings, multiple cattle mutilations, ton of poltergeist activity, portal sightings, and cryptid creatures that they were constantly seeing out here. And this goes back a ways. Like, the TV show is on pretty recently, or might even still be on now, but this goes all the way back to 1990. The ranch was actually studied in 1990 and the following years by billionaire Robert Bigelow under the National Institute for Discovery Science. It later became connected to the Pentagon's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, otherwise known as ATIP. There's now a TV show, as I said, but they get, and if you watch the TV show, it's got the same trappings as every other sort of reality-adjacent TV show. How much of this is actually going on, and you guys are worried about it from a research standpoint, and how much of this would make really good TV if something happened? And I think, honestly, it's a pretty good mix. There are a lot of things that they're studying out there that they reference old things that happen, but then sometimes they kind of just go on a ghost hunt like they're with Zach Baggins all of a sudden. So while I like the TV show, it compels me. I would rather just hear the research around it, maybe hear from Bigelow himself. But the reported phenomena include all those things I already said, including radiation spikes, GPS just completely going off the rails. Like, GPS is useless on this ranch. Objects disappearing in midair, that's actually one that they did catch on the TV show. There's a thing, and then there's just not a thing. Kind of crazy. And people getting injured, sometimes internally, without any visible cause. Now, the believers lean into this one. They really do, all right? There's a TV show. That's one part about it. Probably bastardizes the believer community a little bit, but there's multiple witnesses to all this stuff. They constantly have teams of people out there working on it. The government funded an investigation for quite some time, which is, hey, that piques my interest. And consistent weird electromagnetic interference, which is actually being recorded out there by instruments. So now, why skeptics might not believe it? This is what you would consider high strangeness, okay? Because you listen to it, the title is The Skinwalker Ranch. Skinwalkers are beings, I guess ethereal beings, if you will, that many Native American cultures have within the lore of their culture, and these things live out in the rural areas, and they will call your name in the middle of the night, or they do all sorts of creepy stuff. They shapeshift, you name it. That type of high strangeness is ripe for confirmation bias all the time. Whenever it's a Bigfoot or something like that, that you get your pockets of people that say, absolutely, because me too. And that's okay, but also it causes people to be skeptical because it's a lot like, and this is the only time I'm going to listen or I'm going to talk about our political climate in the U.S., but it's the loudest people on the furthest edges that make the most noise, that generate the excitement about this, and they tend to grab more people that are within their belief system, if you know what I mean. There's been a lot of sensationalized TV production, as I already said. That's another skeptical viewpoint. And a lot of people are saying, hey, you're in kind of a geologic anomaly zone. You could just be dealing with weird electromagnetics, things going on like that. That doesn't explain the cattle mutilations, guys, and I'll tell you right now, that's the part that's the weirdest to me. Whatever's out there, whether it be human or otherwise, is messing with the cattle in a way that I can't explain. The mutilations are just like all the rest of them. They're absolutely surgical in their precision. Things like eyes have been removed, nose, tongues, genitals, nipples, things that you don't do without a scalpel and some skill, without making it look like it's been to a shaky-handed butcher. Another thing that happened, that this was actually documented on the TV show, was they had a group of cattle that they had sequestered in one area because they were investigating a cattle mutilation. There was a small barn, let's say 10 by 8, okay, with 2 double doors that open. I'm talking 8 to 10 cattle, full size. They go off into the field with the TV cameras. They're documenting all of this. They look at the cattle mutilation. It's right there on the film. They come back, and those cattle are gone. And the fence is closed. There's no cattle on the ranch. They're not out there. We can't see them. Where did they go? They are in this barn behind a locked door, standing like shoulder to shoulder and mashed into this barn. If you've ever dealt with cattle, you don't get them into little tiny compact places like that. Once there's enough of them in there, the rest of them aren't going to go in. And this was way too many cattle for this barn, guys. I can't explain it at all. It could just be really good TV production. This could be a complete farce. But that was the one, when I was watching that show, that I was like, how do you fake that? What happened there? What if this is true, what the hell's going on that ranch? And if it's not, cancel this TV show immediately. So I don't know. I'll put that out there to you guys. Amanda, you look like you're kind of interested in this one.
I honestly, at first I was like, this is weird. They're taking like all the conspiracy theories and putting them like all in one place. But then it got me thinking, right? So there's certain places in the world that are supposed to be places that are a concentration of energy. You talk about places like Sedona, Arizona. So if we have these places where these things are happening, and remember, the unknown is only unknown until science figures it out and names it, right? And I feel like that always falls over the paranormal things, you know? And I think that it's harder for us to go along with something that might be a legitimate theory because we're like, no, we can't believe in that because we've always believed in this. So that being said, say this place is one of those magnetic places, one of these places where strange things happen. You add the secondary layer of there being extraterrestrials. Why, if they're exploring our planet, would they not be hyper interested in a place like that? That's what I think. I think we're putting the two together, and that's how you get something like Skinwalker Ranch.
That's a really good point. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great thought on that, Amanda. Yeah, my thought the whole time while you're kind of going through it is like, just it screams of something government going on. Yeah, I mean, if there is these concentrations, I didn't know about Sedona actually. My mind went to the Bermuda Triangle, which I guess isn't really all that. I think I think the Bermuda Triangle might have been overhyped.
Yeah,
I
I think
haven't heard
so.
about haven't heard a lot about it lately, but I think it's a great point. Like if there's these weird connections I mean, if there's advanced beings visiting the Earth from another dimension or from another planet, maybe there's some kind of weird cosmic resource or energy that's in these places that they are extracting for some reason. Maybe and the animals is I did growing up, not a ton, but my relatives had a farm, and I would from time to time help them move cattle from pasture to pasture. And you're right, you get not really gonna get them in a tight space, and they are tough to wrangle. You're not gonna give into that tight space in however long it was, a couple minutes it sounds like.
Yeah, about 40, if I remember correctly. It's about 40 minutes.
Yeah, no, and it's just the only other thing place my mind goes when talking about the variety of stuff going on is just experimentation. Like some kind of government facility underground, and they're just trying a bunch of crazy stuff out. Maybe with these shape shifting beings, and maybe I'm trying to think of what would be. I've always tried to think about what the compelling reason would be for the surgicalness and precision behind the mutilations, or why they would have to feel the need to turn a cow inside out, so they
Right.
stuff these things. So, yeah, it's, Skinwalker Ranch isn't one, like I said, but more adjacent on the edges of that one. And I think the reason is because of all, like kind of Amanda was saying, taking all these things and putting them in one place. How is that possible? Well, maybe this is the genesis for all the things we've heard in the
Yeah,
past.
right.
'Cause if I remember correctly, this hasn't been something that was just happening in the 90s. This has been happening in this plot of land as far back as like the 1800s, 1700s, if
Yes.
if I remember that correctly. So that part right there in itself, I think points more to what Amanda's saying of like this weird zone of cosmic energy
Yeah, like
thing.
maybe it's just that maybe that's the black hole on Earth, and that's where they got to come in at, and that's where they got to leave from. Who knows? I mean, that's part of the fun about talking about it. Is it's the same thing when you talk about the TicTac video. That all happened out over water, and there's a lot of speculation. These things aren't living on land. If they're here, they're living in the ocean, which we have not explored hardly at all. So it's fun to talk about, and also it's fun to take a stance. We've talked about dying on hills on this podcast. My hill is Meatloaf. I'm dead up there. They've killed me. They've stoned me from the bottom. I am laying dead on the Meatloaf Hill, and that was my choice. I'm putting you guys on the spot now for the end of the episode here, because we've been going for a while. Jake's got work to do. I want to get him back to it. We're going to do a short segment here called Buy It or Bullshit, okay? Amanda, I'm going to come to you first. The UAP phenomenon that we talked about first with Commander David Fravor, the TicTac, Gimbal, and GoFast footage. Buy it or bullshit?
I'm kind of on the fence with it. I don't know if in this particular scenario I buy it, but I would say in general, the concept, I buy it. Does that
Okay.
count?
Well, it counts because I didn't remove the fence from the equation before I asked you. The fence is now removed. The options are
We'll say
buy it
buy
or
it.
bullshit.
Buy
Okay,
it.
buy it. There it is. Jake, the UAP phenomenon, buy it or bullshit?
I'm buying it every day and twice on Sunday.
I like it. All right, Amanda, back to you. The Younger Dryas Impact Hypothesis. We spent a lot of time talking about this one. A lot of research out there about it. A lot of scientists pushing back on it. Buy it or bullshit, Amanda?
Man, listen, I'm really scared that at the end of this episode, I am going to be officially labeled a conspiracy theorist because I buy it.
Jake, I don't even have to ask you.
It's not a conspiracy or theory to me. It's fact.
It's fact. I love it. All right. So the one that I think I saved for last for a good reason, because it's probably the most fantastic of all of them, Skinwalker Ranch. Amanda, buy it or BS?
Oh man, this one's tough for me. The TV show and everything, I'm kind of leaning towards BS on this one.
Okay. That levels us out a little bit. Jake, your thoughts?
The show is BS, but I'm buying the theory.
Okay, I like that split there. For me, I buy it all. I believe it all. Tell me your thoughts. I think it's all true. But all jokes aside, that's what I want you to think when you email me after you listen to this episode about the conspiracy theories you want to hear about. Now, we kept this light. We kept this away from all things current politics, and we're going to continue to do that because that's how we get to have fun and not have to hate each other at the end of these episodes. So send in your recommendations. podcast@liquidtrucking.com. What conspiracies do you buy? What do you sell? What do you think about the ones we talked about today? And what ones would you like to hear of on our definitely happening part 2 of our conspiracy theory episode? This was awesome. Jake, thank you so much for being here, man. Thank you for putting this kernel of an idea in my mind. You're coming back on here again, man, whether you like it or not. Every time we get you on here, we have these really long, drawn-out conversations, and I love them. Did you know our hockey episode is like one of the most listened to episodes out of the last 20 that we've done?
Not.
Oh, yeah, and it's way out front, Jake. There's another one that is in first place, but it is a close second right now. So hats off to you, man. You're really good at this.
Heck, hey, I appreciate that. I always enjoy it, but also, too, I did want to state, for the record, undecided on the flat Earth stuff. So just want to...
Oh, no!
Undecided. We'll let you do your research. Yeah, we'll let you do your research for next time. Quote, unquote, research, right? Thanks for being here today, Jake. We'll talk to you again next time.
See ya.
You know, I don't play favorites on this show. I love every single guest that comes on, and Jake gets to be right in there in that bunch, man. We always have a great conversation. Always end up talking for a lot longer than I thought we would, and Amanda, bringing you into the party didn't really affect that. Jake and I went almost an hour talking hockey the last time, just the two of us, and I'm what I would call like a moderately adjacent hockey fan. Like, I've got my team, but I don't really watch it. So it's awesome to bring Jake in here, especially when he's so into like the Younger Dryas Impact Theory. You can tell he's really looked into that and done some what you'd call bona fide research. And I don't just mean internet research. I mean, he might have read a book, it sounds like.
I mean, listen, he needs to do some research on that whole flat earth thing, because if he can expand the trucking industry to just anywhere in the world will drive it, then, you know, he could be making some big money here or something, but he needs to get on that.
What about the ice wall, Amanda? We can't just drive up the ice wall, right? I don't know. This is kind of why, because I think that even with flat earth, it's one of those things that it's probably the most proven that one is wrong, okay? Right. Out of all of the ones that we could select to talk about, I think we have more evidence on that one than any of the rest of them, what with all the pictures from space and such. But I can't be honest in my conspiracy theory mind without at least giving those people a seat at the table. So even though it's at the kids' table and it's in another room, we've still given them a seat here. If one of you guys wants to come on and talk about flat Earth with us, we'll listen. We'll entertain it. I just entertained cryptid creatures and cattle mutilations, and then some kind of weird non-human figure stuffing a bunch of cattle in a barn. I'll entertain it.
I'm taking the cattle and the creepy crawlies and the spaceship, and we're all going to Atlantis. So this is what's happening.
That story you did tell about Kyrie was funny, though. It's like it's one thing to just be a fan of him, but you actually knew him, you had worked with him, and then you learned that. Is that the only time in your life that somebody that you've been closely acquainted with has let you in on one of their beliefs that you've just been like, oh, man, I don't know if I can do it anymore?
What's the one? There's the thing. It's like a whole group of people, and they believe that you can like buy your identity from the government. Usually you see videos of them getting pulled over and they're like, I'm not driving, I'm traveling.
I'm a sovereign citizen.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. Listen, I have some in-laws. We will leave it at that. But
okay,
that one right there, man.
No, I think we all have some in-laws that fall, or maybe just extended family that fall into these categories, and we don't want to out them here. But yeah, that's why Thanksgiving conversation is sort of fun these days, right?
Right.
Well, listen, as I said in the intro and at the end of Jake's interview there, we want to hear from you guys. What do you think about any of the ones we talked about? What are your thoughts on Skinwalker Ranch? How do you feel about these UAPs? What do you think about our Younger Dryas Impact Theory that we talked about here? I mean, there are really a lot of high-level scientists debating this as we speak. I mean, they're embroiled in what I would even call controversy. I've already mentioned this podcast once, but I am a fan of when Joe Rogan brings on scientists. I really like that. I don't listen to a lot of the comedians. I listen to some of the musicians, some of the athletes, but what really draws me in is when I see PhD or something like that in the title. And I want to hear those people talk because they've, I haven't studied anything for 8 years. Like, all of the things I've studied haven't equaled 8 years, Amanda, and they studied one thing for at least 8 years, so I'm always compelled by that. But we mentioned a couple of guys, Graham Norton and Flint Dibble, and Graham has been talking about this Younger Dryas Impact Theory on the Joe Rogan podcast for a long time, and at one point in time, he went on the show and Flint Dibble came out in the public and basically chastised him, called him a liar, called him a racist, called him a bigot, called him all of these things that are going to elicit a reaction, at which time Joe reached out to Flint and said, why don't you come on the show and debate Graham?
I love that.
And they did, and nothing came of it. I didn't feel like I had any more answers, but a few of the things got to be said from scientist to scientist that I love to hear, like, why are you defending this hypothesis just because it's there? Isn't your job to be finding out new things? Why do you reject new ideas when they come in because they don't match up with your narrative? And that really, I think, is the nexus of all of this. With unknown shit like this, Amanda, we can't sit here and say that's wrong. You're the scariest person in the room if you think you know any of this stuff 100%, in my eyes.
That's what we have scientists for. You keep going at it and at it and at it until you see the same result over and over and over again. You can say, that's it. So why say no if someone else has a path to an answer, could potentially have a path to an answer just because it's different than the answer you thought it was going to be? And I think a big part of that is we're not seeing, we hear about or are taught about major scientific discoveries, right? This is not an age where we are seeing these big, massive things because we have explored so much. Where we need to go if we want that to happen is underwater.
Yep, absolutely. And there's one thing, too, that really pains me about the way these things stay hidden or stay undiscovered for so long. And this can be fantastic stuff like what we're talking about, or this could be a simple antibiotic medicine that the pride. If we could figure out a way to strip scientists of their pride and they would
notoriety.
never care about what is right and what is wrong, because that's what we're up against here. Is you've got a guy who spent 40 years figuring something out, the entire scientific community and the world accepted it, and then 20 years later, as that guy's at the very end of his life, you've got some young 25-year-old hotshot that maybe has disproven his theory, and the guy with all the tenure refuses to let his theory die because he wants to be right, not because he wants to find the right answer. And look, pride, it's one hell of a thing that all of us suffer from at times. And I wish that, I wish there was an off button, Amanda, honestly. Like you and I developed a button a long time ago in our careers, which is our FCC button, which means when we are on FCC airways, something happens in our mind and we do not swear. Whether or not we talk like sailors every day or the F word is our favorite word in the vocabulary, Amanda, I know you have this switch, right? Where you just, the swear words just shut off. You know what you can and can't say. I wish we could do that with pride. I really do.
For sure. I feel like if you're really obsessed with putting your name on something, you shouldn't be a scientist. You should be a builder. And then every street and neighborhood you develop, you can put your name on it. And there you go.
I like
science
that idea.
is for all of us, right? Science is for humanity, not for notoriety. So
I've got some unincorporated area out behind my house that really nobody manages. I could technically build a road and call it Marcus Avenue.
you sure could. Listen, I have an uncle in Georgia who's a builder, and this man has built so many neighborhoods. And you know how many streets he's named, Amanda? 0.
What in the world? All right, give me his number. I'm going to have a conversation.
Let's
And
go.
you know what? I'm going to make it Marcus's Amanda's Boulevard. That's what it's going to be. Just because out of respect for you and not having anything named after you that's a street,
Right?
I'm
Come
here
on.
for you, okay?
I think he might be an alien, though. This guy has just 10 pairs of the same exact shoe, 10 pairs of the same pants, 10 of the same shirt. It's weird. It's pretty weird.
Now, we work for a guy like that. I really hope he hears me say that. I really hope he heard me say that. That's going to wrap it up here for us on the Liquid Trucking Podcast today. Amanda, it's been a pleasure having you here. Jake Debo did awesome. Don't forget to head over to the website, podcast.liquidtrucking.com, and click that email link so you can send Amanda and I all the conspiracy theories you want to talk about or hear about, or what you think about the ones we talked about. Do you want to hit the tagline today?
Be safe out there. Keep the rubber side down and the shiny side up. Am I right? Am I close?
You're close. You got it all, but you added the rubber side down part of it. It's just stay safe out there. Keep the shiny side up.
Oh, man, listen. I will work on that, okay? I need
didn't
a
tell
cue
her
card.
I didn't tell her that I was going to do that, guys, so don't put that on Amanda. That one goes squarely on these shoulders.
Listen, I know an indie wrestler, Highway Miles Jacobs, right? And this the arm pump thing is his thing, right? When he comes out to the ring, and his tagline, rubber side down, shiny side up. So it was
okay,
like an earworm.
I get it. I like that. Highway Miles is his name.
Isn't that great?
That is great. That is great. We're gonna have to do a pro wrestling episode because I know you're a fan. So we're gonna have to do one here before too long.
And Mike, our one editor, Mike, shout out to Mike. He's a wrestling fan too. Stop it. I'm all over it.
All right, we'll get you one. We'll get you one sooner or later. Send us your ideas. Send us your conspiracies. Send us all the good stuff. We'll see you next week for more Liquid Trucking Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in and being the gold standard of drivers on the road. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel and tune in next week for another episode of the Liquid Trucking Podcast.
Interested in finding out more about what it takes to bring a podcast like the Liquid Trucking Podcast to your fleet? Bulldog provides tailor-made top-to-bottom podcast production services. We'll meet your terminal staff, connect with your drivers, and bring you the content you want your drivers to hear. Type bulldog.works into your browser to connect with us and learn more about what we can do for your fleet. That's bulldog.works for podcasts, tenacious recruiting, and more.